June 18, 1961. Mayme Johnson was grocery shopping on 125th Street when three men grabbed her, threw her in a car, and disappeared. No witnesses came forward. No ransom note arrived. Just silence. The Italian mob thought they'd found Bumpy Johnson's weakness. They thought kidnapping his wife would force him to hand over Harlem's drug trade. They thought wrong. What Bumpy did in the next 48 hours didn't just get his wife back. It made the five families hold an emergency meeting. It made Vito Genovese send an apology from prison. And it made sure that for the rest of Bumpy Johnson's life, nobody, and I mean nobody, ever touched his family again. This is the story they tell in whispers. The story about the day Bumpy Johnson declared war on the entire Italian Mafia and won in 2 days. To understand what happened on June 18, 1961, you need to understand who Mayme Johnson was to Bumpy. She wasn't just his wife. She was his anchor. His reason. The woman who'd waited for him through 2 prison sentences, who'd kept his empire running when he was locked up, who'd loved him when loving him meant danger. Bumpy met Mamie Hatcher in 1948 at a rent party in Harlem. She was 32 years old, educated, elegant, worked as a secretary. She wore pearls and spoke proper English. She was everything the streets weren't. And when Bumpy Johnson, the most dangerous man in Harlem, walked into that party, she looked him dead in the eye and said, "You're blocking my view of the band." Most women either feared Bumpy or wanted him for his power. Mamie did neither. She saw him. The man underneath the legend. The boy from South Carolina who'd learned to survive by being harder than everyone else. The man who read Shakespeare in prison and cried when he heard Billie Holiday sing. They married in 1949. Small ceremony. Just family. Bumpy wore a new suit. Mamie wore a simple white dress. And for the first time in his violent life, Bumpy Johnson had something he was terrified of losing. For 12 years, Mamie was untouchable. Not because of Bumpy's threats. Because of respect. Because in the criminal underworld, there were lines you didn't cross. You didn't hurt women. You didn't hurt children. You didn't hurt family. Those were the rules. The code. And Bumpy had always followed it. Never touched a mobster's wife. Never threatened a rival's children. Honor among thieves wasn't just a saying. It was survival. Break those rules and everyone turns against you. But in 1961, the rules were changing. The old gangsters, the ones who'd built organized crime on codes and respect, were dying off or going to prison. Lucky Luciano was exiled in Italy. Frank Costello was retired. Vito Genovese was in federal prison. And the new generation, the young hungry mobsters who'd grown up watching the Untouchables on television and thought violence was the answer to everything, they didn't care about the old ways. Vincent, Vinny Knuckles, Carbonaro was one of them. He was 28 years old, a captain in the Genovese family, ambitious and stupid in equal measure. Vinny looked at Harlem and saw millions in heroin profits. Looked at Bumpy Johnson and saw an old man, 54 years old, slowing down, vulnerable. And when Bumpy refused to let the Italians sell drugs in Harlem for the 3rd time in 2 years, Vinny decided to send a message. Not to Bumpy. To his wife. June 18, 1961. 10:47 a.m. Mayme Johnson left her brownstone on Edgecombe Avenue to do her Sunday shopping. She wore a blue dress, white gloves, carried her purse. She walked 3 blocks to the A&P grocery store on 125th Street. Normal morning. Sunday routine. She'd done it 1,000 times. Bumpy was at Wells' restaurant meeting with Raymond Quick Lewis about a policy bank that was having trouble with a crooked cop. Routine business. He told Mamie he'd be home by noon. They'd have lunch together like they did every Sunday. Mamie finished shopping at 11:23 a.m. paid cash. Carried 2 bags of groceries. Started walking home. That's when the car pulled up. A black Cadillac. 4 doors. 3 men inside. One witness, Mrs. Dorothy Williams, 67 years old, lived above the barbershop across the street. She was watering her plants when she saw it happen. 2 white men in suits got out of the car. Walked straight to Mayme. Grabbed her arms. Mayme screamed. Dropped her groceries. Oranges rolled across the sidewalk. The men threw her in the back seat. The car sped off. Whole thing took maybe 15 seconds. Mrs. Williams ran to her phone. Called the police. Got a dispatcher who took her information slowly, without urgency. Another Negro woman having a domestic dispute, probably. The police said they'd send someone when they could. Mrs. Williams hung up. Dialed another number. Wells Restaurant. Asked for Bumpy Johnson. Told him his wife had just been taken. Bumpy dropped the phone. Didn't hang up. Just dropped it. Raymond said Bumpy's face went completely blank. Not angry. Not panicked. Blank. Like someone had turned off a switch inside him. Then Bumpy stood up. Walked to the back office. Came out carrying a shotgun. Put on his coat. Checked his razor in his waistband. Looked at Raymond. Call Willie. Call Quick Lewis. Call everyone. I want every man we have on the street in 10 minutes. Boss, what happened? They took Mayme. Raymond's face went pale. Who took her? Italians. Had to be. Nobody else would be that stupid. What do you want us to do? Bumpy loaded shells into the shotgun. His hands were steady. Too steady. Find her. And find out who gave the order. By 12:15 p.m., 40 of Bumpy's men were on the streets. Knocking on doors. Talking to shopkeepers. Asking questions. A black Cadillac with 3 white men. Somebody had to have seen something. By 1 p.m., they had a partial license plate. By 1:30 p.m., they had the car. Abandoned in the Bronx, 2 blocks from Arthur Avenue. Little Italy. The heart of Italian mob territory. Bumpy stood in his living room staring at the phone. Waiting for a ransom call. Waiting for demands. Waiting for something. The phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Bumpy picked it up on the first ring. Mr. Johnson. The voice was young. Confident. Cocky. I have something that belongs to you. If you hurt her. Relax. She's fine. For now. See, we got a business proposal. You've been saying no to our expansion into Harlem. That's disrespectful. So we're gonna help you see things our way. What do you want? Simple. You step aside. Let us run the drug trade north of 110th Street. You keep your numbers racket, your loan sharking, whatever. But the real money, the heroin, that's ours now. You agree, your wife comes home safe. You refuse. I refuse. Silence on the line. Excuse me? I said I refuse. You think you can take my wife and I'll just hand over Harlem? You don't know who you're dealing with. The voice lost its confidence. Mr. Johnson, maybe you don't understand the situation. No, you don't understand. You just declared war on me. And I'm going to show you what that means. You've got until midnight to bring Mayme back unharmed. After midnight, I start killing every Italian I can find until somebody tells me where she is. You're bluffing. Try me. Bumpy hung up. Raymond was standing in the doorway. Boss, they got maybe 20 guys in the Bronx. We can't go to war with the whole Genovese family. I'm not going to war with the family. I'm going to war with whoever took her. But they're going to think it's the whole family until they give her back. What's the plan? Bumpy walked to his desk. Pulled out a list of names. Addresses. Business locations. He'd kept this list for years. Every Italian operation in New York. Policy banks. Loan sharking offices. Gambling dens. Warehouses. Legitimate businesses that laundered money. At exactly 6 p.m., we hit 12 locations simultaneously. We don't rob them. We don't negotiate. We burn them. All of them. Send a message. Every hour Mayme's gone, 12 more burn. Raymond stared at the list. Boss, that's gonna cost them millions. Good. Maybe they'll care more about their money than their pride. At 6 p.m., 12 fires started across New York. A policy bank in the Bronx. A loan sharking office in Brooklyn. A gambling den in Queens. A restaurant in Manhattan. A warehouse in Staten Island. 12 fires. All within 10 minutes of each other. The fire department was overwhelmed. The police didn't know what was happening. The Italian mob knew exactly what was happening. Bumpy Johnson was keeping his promise. Vinny Knuckles got the call at 6:23 p.m. He was at his social club on Arthur Avenue when one of his lieutenants burst in. Boss, we got a problem. Somebody's hitting our operations. 12 locations. All burning. Who? Bumpy Johnson. Vinny laughed. One old man. Get our guys together. We'll handle this. Boss, it's not just him. He's got his whole organization. And he's saying every hour the woman stays missing, 12 more locations burn. Vinny stopped laughing. How many locations we got total? In the 5 boroughs? Maybe 200. Vinny did the math. At 12 per hour, Bumpy could destroy their entire New York operation in less than a day. Call the other families. Tell them we got a situation. Already did. They're pissed. Saying you started a war without permission. Saying if this keeps up, the cops are gonna crack down on everybody. Vinny's phone rang. He picked it up. A voice he didn't recognize said 6 words, 7 p.m. 12 more burn. Then hung up. At 7 p.m., 12 more fires. A bakery that laundered money. A trucking company. A nightclub. A garage. A butcher shop. A dry cleaner. 12 more. The 5 families held an emergency meeting at 8 p.m. Every boss, every captain. The Genovese, Gambino, Colombo, Bonanno, Lucchese families. All of them. Carlo Gambino, the most powerful mob boss in New York, spoke first. Who authorized this kidnapping? Silence. I'm asking again. Who took Bumpy Johnson's wife? A Genovese captain raised his hand. Vinny Carbonaro. He's trying to force Johnson out of Harlem's drug trade. And where is Vinny now? Hiding. Bumpy's got 40 guys looking for him. Gambino looked around the table. How much damage so far? 24 locations. Maybe 3 million in losses. And it's only been 3 hours. And Bumpy says he'll keep going? Every hour. 12 more. Gambino stood up. This ends now. Find the woman. Bring her back unharmed. Then bring me Vinny Carbonaro. Boss, we can't just. We can and we will. You know the rules. We don't touch families. Vinny broke the rules. Now Bumpy's burning down New York and every cop in the city is watching. We fix this now or we all go down. At 9 p.m., Bumpy's phone rang again. Mr. Johnson, this is Carlo Gambino. We've never met, but I want you to know that what happened to your wife was not authorized by the commission. Vinny Carbonaro acted alone. We're looking for your wife now. And when we find her, she'll be returned to you safely. Where's Vinny? We're handling it. Not good enough. I want him. Mr. Johnson. I want the man who took my wife. You give him to me or this city burns. Gambino was quiet for 10 seconds. If we give you Vinny, this ends? If my wife comes home safe, and you give me Vinny, this ends. Deal. At 10:37 p.m., a car pulled up to Bumpy's brownstone. Mayme Johnson stepped out. She was shaken but unharmed. Bumpy ran down the steps, grabbed her, held her like he'd never let go. Mayme collapsed into Bumpy's arms on the steps of their brownstone. She was trembling, her blue dress torn at the shoulder, white gloves missing, but she was alive. Bumpy held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, and for the first time in 12 hours, he allowed himself to feel the fear he'd been holding back. Did they hurt you? His voice was barely a whisper. No. They were scared, Bumpy. Terrified. They kept getting phone calls about fires. About their bosses looking for them. They knew they'd made a mistake. Bumpy pulled back, looked at her face. Where were you? A warehouse. Somewhere in the Bronx. I don't know exactly. They kept me in a back room. Gave me water. But Bumpy, her voice broke. I heard them talking. They were going to kill me. Not at first, but when you refused to negotiate, when you started the fires, they panicked. Said they had to eliminate the evidence. But they didn't. No. Because around 9 p.m., different men showed up. Italian men, but not the ones who took me. They had a screaming match. Lots of Italian I couldn't understand. Then the new men put me in a car and brought me here. Bumpy helped her inside. Made her tea. Sat with her on the couch while she calmed down. His men stood guard outside. Raymond came in, nodded at Mayme. Thank God you're safe, Mrs. Johnson. Thank you, Raymond. Raymond looked at Bumpy. Boss, we got a call. Gambino wants to meet. Says he's got Vinny. Where? Neutral ground. The docks in Red Hook. Midnight. Just you. Mayme grabbed Bumpy's arm. Don't go. Please. I'm home. I'm safe. Let it end. Bumpy kissed her forehead. It can't end until everyone knows what happens when you touch my family. I'll be back before sunrise. I promise. Bumpy. I have to do this, Mayme. Not for revenge. For protection. If I let this go, they'll try again. Someone else will think they can use you to control me. I have to make sure nobody ever thinks that again. At 11:47 p.m., Bumpy arrived at the Red Hook docks. The warehouse district was empty, dark except for a few street lamps casting yellow pools of light. A black Lincoln was parked under one of the lamps. Carlo Gambino stood beside it. Alone. No bodyguards visible, but Bumpy knew they were there. Hidden. Watching. Bumpy walked toward him. Shotgun slung over his shoulder. Razor in his waistband. He stopped 10 feet away. Mr. Gambino. Mr. Johnson. I'm glad your wife is home safe. Where's Vinny? Gambino opened the trunk of the Lincoln. Vinny Knuckles was inside. Bound. Gagged. Conscious. His eyes went wide when he saw Bumpy. He's yours, Gambino said. Do what you want with him. We won't interfere. Bumpy looked at Vinny. This young punk who'd thought kidnapping was a business strategy. Who'd put his hands on Mayme. Who'd made Bumpy spend 12 hours living in hell. Get him out. Gambino's men appeared from the shadows. Pulled Vinny from the trunk. Cut the ropes on his legs but left his hands tied. Removed the gag. Vinny immediately started talking. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean, it was just business. I thought. You thought wrong. Bumpy's voice was ice. You thought you could take my wife and I'd fold. You thought I was old. Weak. Past my prime. I made a mistake. Please. I'll leave Harlem alone. I'll leave New York if you want. Just please. You know what you taught me tonight, Vinny? You taught me that the new generation doesn't understand respect. Doesn't understand the code. So I'm going to teach you. And everyone watching is going to learn the same lesson. Bumpy pulled out his razor. The same one he'd carried for 30 years. The one that had carved his legend into the streets of Harlem. Vinny started crying. Please. God, please. I have a family. I have. So do I. You should have thought about that before. What happened next took 3 minutes. When it was over, Vinny Knuckles was on the ground, alive but marked forever. Bumpy had carved 3 letters into his forehead. Deep enough to scar. Deep enough that everyone who saw Vinny for the rest of his life would know what he'd done. The letters, W.F. For wife. You're going to live, Bumpy said, standing over him. You're going to live with this scar for the rest of your life. And every time you look in a mirror, every time someone asks you what it means, you're going to remember this night. You're going to remember that you touched something sacred. And you're going to tell them what happens when you break the code. Bumpy looked at Gambino. We done? We're done. And Mr. Johnson, I want you to know, this won't happen again. I'm sending word to every family. Your wife, your family, they're off limits. Forever. Anybody touches them, they answer to all of us. Good. Because if anyone ever tries this again, I won't burn 12 locations an hour. I'll burn the whole damn city down. Bumpy walked away. Left Vinny bleeding on the dock. Got in his car. Drove home to Mayme. He arrived at 1:23 a.m. Mayme was still awake, sitting in the living room in her robe, drinking tea. When Bumpy walked in, she stood up. Is it done? It's done. Did you? She couldn't finish the question. He's alive. Marked, but alive. Everyone will know what he did. And nobody will ever try it again. Mayme walked to him. Put her hand on his face. I was so scared. Not for me. For you. I knew what you'd do if something happened to me. I knew you'd burn the world down. I would have. I'd burn everything if it meant getting you back. I know. That's what scares me. That's what's always scared me about loving you. You're capable of such violence. Such destruction. Only to protect what I love. She kissed him. Soft. Gentle. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that when your time comes, when all this catches up to you, you'll let go peacefully. No more wars. No more burning cities. Just peace. Bumpy held her close. I promise. The story of what happened on June 18, 1961 spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. Not the fires Bumpy had set, everyone knew about those. The story was what happened after. The story about Carlo Gambino, the most powerful mob boss in America, handing over one of his own captains to a black gangster from Harlem. That had never happened before. That broke every rule the Italians had about racial hierarchy and power. But more than that, it was the message. The lesson. Touch Bumpy Johnson's family and the world burns. Not just Harlem. The whole city. Maybe the whole East Coast. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't just protecting his wife. He was enforcing a code that was dying. The code that said families were sacred. That women and children were off limits. That some lines you never cross, no matter how much money is at stake. Vinny Carbonaro survived. He left New York 3 days later. Moved to Florida. The scar on his forehead never faded. And for the next 40 years, whenever anyone asked him what WF stood for, he told them the truth. About the night he kidnapped Bumpy Johnson's wife. About the fires that destroyed 24 mob locations in 6 hours. About Carlo Gambino handing him over like a sacrifice. About Bumpy Johnson teaching him that some men can't be controlled, can't be threatened, can't be broken. Because they love something more than they fear death. The 5 families never tried to expand into Harlem again. Not during Bumpy's lifetime. When Bumpy died in 1968, Mayme attended his funeral wearing the same pearl necklace she'd worn the day they met. 7 years after she'd been kidnapped. She stood at his grave and whispered, "You kept your promise. You let go peacefully. Now rest, my love. You've earned it." Carlo Gambino sent flowers. A massive arrangement with a card that read, "In respect of a worthy adversary." He protected his kingdom and his queen. There is no higher honor. The lesson of June 18, 1961 became legend. In mob circles, in street corners, in barbershops and social clubs, they tell the story about the day Bumpy Johnson's wife was taken. About how he declared war on the Italian Mafia with nothing but 40 men and absolute conviction. About how he won in less than 24 hours. Not through superior numbers. Not through violence, though there was plenty of that. He won through something more powerful. Love. The willingness to destroy everything, including himself, to protect the one person who mattered most. Years later, Frank Lucas, who'd go on to build his own drug empire, asked one of Bumpy's old lieutenants what made Bumpy so dangerous. The lieutenant said, "Most men fear losing what they have. Money, power, respect. Bumpy didn't fear that. He only feared losing Mayme. And when you threaten the only thing a man fears losing, you don't get leverage. You get war." That's the real story. Not about a gangster who terrorized his enemies. About a husband who loved his wife so much that when she was taken, he was willing to burn the entire criminal underworld to get her back. About a man who understood that real power isn't controlling others. It's protecting what you love. At any cost. Mayme Johnson lived until 2009. She was 94 years old when she died. She spent the last 40 years of her life telling Bumpy's story. Not the violent parts. Not the crime. The love. She'd tell anyone who'd listen about the man who read her Shakespeare in bed. Who cried when he held her. Who built an empire not for himself, but so she'd never want for anything. And when people asked her about June 18, 1961, about the kidnapping, the fires, the war that lasted less than a day, she'd smile. A sad smile. A knowing smile. That was the day I realized I'd married the most dangerous man in America. Not because he was violent. Because he loved me more than he loved his own life. And there's nothing more dangerous than a man with nothing left to lose except the one thing he can't live without. She'd pause. Look at whoever was listening. And say, so if you ever love someone, love them the way Bumpy loved me. Like the world could end tomorrow and the only thing that matters is that they know, beyond any doubt, that you'd burn it all down to keep them safe. That's legacy. Not the empire. Not the money. Not the legend. The love. The kind of love that starts wars. The kind that rewrites rules. The kind that makes powerful men bow. Because on June 18, 1961, Bumpy Johnson didn't just get his wife back. He proved that love, real love, is the most powerful weapon in the world. More powerful than guns. More powerful than money. More powerful than fear. And the Mafia never touched Harlem again. If this story of love, loyalty, and the lengths one man will go to protect his family moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe that real power comes from what you're willing to fight for, not what you're willing to take. Share this with someone who needs to understand that the strongest people aren't the ones who hurt others, they're the ones who protect the people they love at any cost. Comment below, what would you do if someone you love was taken? And remember, Bumpy Johnson didn't win because he was the strongest. He won because he loved the deepest. That's the lesson they don't teach in school. That's the story that changed organized crime forever.